Walk with me through the cellar door.
A storm is coming, Francis.
A portal to a more skeptical world.
Cellar Door Skeptics begins right now. Prepare for the revolution with your hosts, Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna.
Oh, welcome to another Cellar Door Skeptics. Thank you all so much for hanging out with us. It's a new night. We're a little late this week. Usually we record, I don't know, I think on Sundays, sometimes Mondays, depending on how hungover Hannah is from the weekend.
Hannah hungover.
Dude. Yeah, I was hungover from physical labor.
Is that what they call it now?
Yeah, too many liftings. The cans. No, we're doing home upgrades, and I mean really deck and outdoor paint and power washing and staining, and just I moved the log pile. We took down 3 trees and we put it all in one place, and we had to pick it up and move it and put it under the deck. So I was kind of hunched over for the entirety of Saturday. It's been a project that turned into this huge thing that we've been unable to just kind of surpass. So I've just been like dead to the world. Today was the first day we worked outside a little bit, but we're like, we'll finish the rest this weekend. We got a big storm coming through. You guys apparently in Michigan are getting hammered.
We were hammered earlier. As of right now, there is nothing really. It's just kind of some trickling. But yeah, the rumor is it's coming back tonight. So I don't know. For me, it's going to be a no sleep night. My dog hates thunderstorms. So.
Oh man, that sucks.
Yeah. So we tried medicating her. We'll see how well it works.
Here's a Benadryl and some cheese.
Yeah. Peanut butter. Peanut butter works better than cheese. Stays in there better.
Yeah. I don't know. My dog Hitch, if you pretend to eat something and then point it towards him, he'd eat nails. He's a complete moron. Like he's a wonderful idiot. That's the best way. That's why I always describe him to people. Like, I don't know.
Anyway, so what I thought we'd do tonight is going to be a little bit different. We're going to have a little bit different of a show. Very similar topic as to last week. Yes, we had 2 shows come out last week because we had one pre-recorded, but we felt the topic of the civil unrest was more important than the conversations we originally recorded. So we didn't scrap it. We just gave 2 episodes for the price of 1. But tonight, I wanted to do a couple of different things. We're gonna look at the defund the police movement. That is not new, and we're gonna have a slightly nuanced conversation because everybody who's white seems to not understand what defund means and wants to continually complain about it. So we're going to have that conversation. I also have a bunch of links. I've been working in the background a little bit with some of the local activist groups in Michigan, and they've provided me with some links to understanding defunding police, what it means, where it can go from here, those type of things. We're also going to talk a little bit about Canadian police versus American police. I know that probably won't be super interesting, but I found it kind of...
it's a good conversation and a good topic to go into because there are some stark differences that I think kind of highlight why there might not be as much surface tension in Canada.
Yeah, there's
they say I apologize while they're beating you with a baton. It just makes
I'm sorry for my baton.
It just makes it more pleasant. Like, you're making me do this. I apologize. Wham, wham.
But before we get into any of that, what I wanted to do is kind of talk about what can you do if you don't want to go out and be involved in the frontline protests, right? Because I think there's a lot of people that are skeptical of this COVID thing, right? They don't want to get out of their house. There's people who physically can't get out of their house. There's other people that have kids, all different life circumstances. So I think one of the big things here, right, is to have that conversation to say, okay, is there anything that we can do as allies to help support this in its time of need? So there was a Rolling Stone article that came out called "Here's Where You Can Donate to Help Protests Against Police Brutality." So I think this is kind of the first one, and I know there's probably a lot of people that'll be like, "Well, we don't want to, we don't want to support that." But I think this is extremely important because people are getting arrested, especially since 45 thought it was fun to send the National Guard in. So there's been more arrests last weekend than there had been in a while, right? And so I think the big thing is how do we take our money and fund other organizations that will help if we're not able to orchestrate it, A, or B, able to get out there on the front lines. And even if you have extra means, you should be donating to these type of things. I switched my donation from my local atheist organization to Black Lives Matter and one other group. So I split my normal donation up amongst them instead during this time versus sponsoring our local atheist group, which I'm sure probably they'll be super happy I did that. But, there's sometimes it's a little more important than worrying about whether there's no God or not.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of hazards. So one of the thing, and this is right here, there is a National Bail Fund Network. There is a full directory right here. And I don't know if I click it. Yeah, see, it takes me into a different page. Hold on. Bring it back for y'all. But there's a whole directory right here of community bail funds. You can donate to emergency rapid responders as well. Otherwise, there's a list of bail funds, and it looks like they're going to be updating it, consistently. So they have it for this month. These are the ones. So in Birmingham, Huntsville, let's scroll down to, I don't know what comes first, Michigan. So there's a Michigan Solidarity Bail Fund. And as you can see, there you go. There's a link right here. They talk about their story. This is a group that has not been around for a long time, but they have definitely been around longer than, let's just say, a month. Because I know there's a lot of people are going, hey, do I really want to donate my money to something that just started a month ago? You go down to Ohio, and I don't think there's any Canadian ones in here. Ohio has quite a few of them. So depending on what area you live in Ohio, the BLM group there is actually helping fund bails. Columbus has their own Freedom Fund. There's a community church fund. I don't know where Youngstown is. I didn't even know that was a city in Ohio. So
they're working with a bunch of people. NPR was talking about some of the leaders of the community are actually directly working with some of the leadership for the local BLM group, and so they're I mean it's on the radio in the morning on the way in, so it's active enough that it at least made it there.
Yep. So as you can see, there's a lot of different ones in the states that you can donate to. Other options are there's a New York Black Mutual Aid Fund, and I hate that it opens it in another tab. That drives me nuts. There you go. As you can see here, they're doing more than just aid for bailouts, but they are specifically working in New York City. So if you live in that area, Mr. Phelps, you're more than welcome to donate to this if you would like to.
Huh.
So then they have again the other funds. If you talk on a national level, Unicorn Riot. Though I was a little weirded out by Unicorn Riot because when I was watching their streams a couple weeks ago, they had a lot of alt-right people in their comment section. So I honestly thought it was a conservative. 100% thought this was a conservative safe space. Did not know that it was headed up by a bunch of people that are working towards more socialistic belief sets, right? So I thought that was a little different.
Maybe they got a connection, like trying to bring people in to start a dialogue. And like the only ones that get to stay are ones that aren't like completely combative. I don't know. We've tried that, and sometimes that works in some of the conversations and stuff that we have, and sometimes it just fails completely. I don't know. Maybe they've got a good like team that's keeping people productive as opposed to just turning into the echo screamy whatever mess that it always turns into.
Yeah. So I think that is some of it. One of the big ones here is the Memorial Fund. So again, I'll have to go back, but this fund is actually for George's family, and there is a Breonna Taylor GoFundMe as well. I don't know if it's in this article, but there is one in there. But this is essentially what they talk about is what they're going to use the money for, right? It's not just going to go into their bank account. They're not saying, hey, just give us money because, you know, somebody died. So I think this one's extremely important, because as they collect them and give them to the family is going to use the funds for legal contacts for people. They're going to use it to help push the envelope to actually create change in George's name.
Very cool.
So there's a couple other ones in here. You know, I mean, I'll be honest, I did not go through every single one of these, but there is a lot of different funds that you can donate to. So if you are wondering where you can spend your money or where you can send some of some donations, or if you still have your stimulus check and haven't spent it yet,
Gone.
this is a good place to do that, because you can donate it and then you can, you know, you can name it in Trump's name. And who was that guy going around donating to Planned Parenthood in Pence's name? There's somebody doing that. I don't remember who it was.
They did that in Pence's name. That's been done in what's the name of the guy in the annoying red hat who said he was going to spend money on a better camera and then just hoarded it? Feuerstein, that guy, and Greg Locke, that waste of that wife abusing pastor, has had a lot of people donating to Planned Parenthood in their name. So yeah, I always support that kind of passive aggressive.
I don't know if there was like one person who did like a really big one, but I remember there were just being like during the women's marches right after the election, there was a whole bunch of people that were donating in Pence's name to Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood had a huge influx of money. So I mean, that's awesome. if you need a hashtag and that's going to throw some money towards a really great organization that does more than abortions, it does all kinds of women's health and everything. Yeah, I don't care what gets that money there. And if it pisses off the guy that you're doing it in their name, because like I think when you do it in their name, like they get like a notification of some kind. So like I can just imagine Pence's mailbox just being overloaded. It makes me happy.
Yeah, but he probably has. You know, he probably has somebody who goes through and clears it out for him, so he doesn't have to, you know, get to the butt hurt.
Just let me have my fantasy that the dump truck dumps a bunch of letters with that little pink logo in the corner, and there's just all in his front yard, and he had to rake them while he was crying. That's what I imagine.
Wouldn't that be amazing?
And his wife was just like in the corner screaming at him, because I'm sure. I just imagine that relationship is relatively strained.
Either way, this is a second article, and we're not going to go through this, but here's another article that I found, and actually I kind of like this blog, so I've subscribed to it. But here's another one that does kind of the same thing. I'll be honest, this one's a little easier to navigate, but this one did the same thing. They compiled all the links, they put them in here. It's a very, very good blog, and it has some really good resources in here. So I went ahead and added that one as well, in case the other ones missed it. Another thing that you can do, and this is, you know, when we talk about, you know, donations, is you can support local businesses, right? So you can support anything in Grand Rapids or any of the other towns that you are in. And I'll be honest, this one was very, this one is going to be very dear to my heart. Especially because they put barbecue right on there, and I've actually eaten at this restaurant before, and they are very good, very good. But the experience Grand Rapids,
Very fine, the best, just the best, the greatest.
No, I got more adjectives than that.
Tremendous.
I was trying anyway. Moving on, failed joke. Experience Grand Rapids, which is you know, it's kind of funny. The food industry even is now supporting the civil unrest, saying, hey, here you go, why don't you come check out these owners? And they had an article on the 4th last week that actually talks about, here you go, here's all of the different cuisines that you can go to that are owned by minorities inside of Grand Rapids. So I apologize. I should have gotten some from Ohio and Canada, but this one I really liked this article, and it gave me a lot of new ideas, for it. So some of these, like I said, some of these I've eaten at. I have eaten at this specific restaurant at least once, I think twice, and they have really good food. I don't know.
And they are.
What's
The
that?
suspense is killing me.
Oh, I'm sorry. Daddy Pete's Barbecue.
Okay, there we go.
And they definitely in here. Will it take me to their webpage? I don't know if it does.
Where are they at in Grand Rapids?
They are right on Eastern Avenue.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
So
There's a bunch of small little barbecue joints. I found one by my place called Smokin' Q's, and it's in like a house, and it's awesome. It is so good, man. It's like finding a good joint, a good place like that, and if it's minority owned, that's even better. To support small communities and small businesses and stuff like that. Right now, it's definitely one of the things that a lot of the things that you saw that were like a sad moment happening is like some of the minority businesses or whatever that were damaged recently. So like Cleveland had some issues with some of the places. So like if you can support them and help them either rebuild or keep them in business, definitely do it.
Yep. And so here, the Chicken Coop made it. And I'll be honest, I did not know it was minority owned, but they have some amazing chicken here. When I lived down in Wyoming area, we used to go there for chicken quite a bit. Because it
The
was
one
just,
on what is it on Hall
right on
and
Division,
Division?
yeah.
Hall and Division. Yeah, I used
Yep.
to go there all the time. Yeah, it's right across the street from the McDonald's. That was right by my old shop. Yeah, you can go in there and like they'll give you every bit of the chicken you want. Like they're like, whatever you want, let's do this. Like I don't know, it's a pretty cool place.
And here's a burger shop. This one I didn't know about, so this one got added to my list as well. So Hall of Fame Burgers on Leonard, on North Leonard. So they have one on South Leonard too. But so they have that. There's an IHOP. I've not been to the Southern Fish Fry, but I have been to the Swing Heaven. I will tell you that. That's
The Swing Heaven
on 44th Street. So this is as you're heading towards 130, you're headed east towards 131. You can't miss it. I think there's a fireworks store actually next to it right now.
It's
But-
not the fireworks store that burned down after that crazy guy
No,
exploded a bunch of stuff.
no, it's not.
Okay.
But-
that was one of the best stories ever.
Same thing. When I lived in Wyoming, I used to go here quite a bit. If you want something that is better than Buffalo Wild Wings, here you go.
Oh
That's
man.
in fairness, that's 100% there. I've never been here, Ches Ogla, but I again added it to my list.
Oh, that's the Caribbean place right on yeah, I've been there. That is amazing. The outside of the building is covered in like this really intricate design. The building looks like it's from outer space. It's insane. That's a Caribbean or I can't remember what country, but yeah, we went in there and you can get goat curry and stuff. It was so good.
I've actually eaten here with my father. This Ethiopian deli, because my father and I were we've eaten here and we've eaten at this Ethiopian restaurant here on Kalamazoo. And it's when we were, I'll be honest, if you don't like Ethiopian food, you should at least try it once. I will tell you it is definitely different though. But if you like Indian food and you want something that's going to taste more unique than that, come here. And they have vegan and vegetarian options. So it's like, when you go there, you don't like. I have a friend, and she has to eat mainly vegetarian meals because her body can't digest some of the meats and proteins and stuff like that. So we can go to these places like this, and they actually cater to other health food things that not every restaurant wants to do. So
Oh, well, I made a discovery today. I had a Rockstar energy drink. Did you know that Rockstar energy drinks are vegan? It says it right on the can.
I did not know that, but I can imagine it is.
I'm just thinking, it's like, what kind of discerning vegan is like, you know what, I need I need an energy drink, and I needed to say that it I was like, I don't know. I imagine like there's like an old an old white guy who's like, the kids are all saying it. We need to put it on the can. That's the only way I can imagine that marketing scheme worked. But either way, it's there. It's there if you want to find it.
The last one I'll highlight, and then again, I have this link in the description, but Jamaican Dave's. And this restaurant has been around for, I'm guessing, I've known about it for 12 to 14 years.
Wow.
And it's downtown. It's when I used to go downtown and go to Billy's and Mulligan's and stuff like that. If you go down early enough, my buddy Johnny, who I used to live with, and he's the one that kind of got me into eating more non-American type food. He brought me here, and this dude is awesome. I mean, for now this is again, 12, 13 years ago, but for $8, there was a huge plate, and we got some chicken, a different type of rice, and then some sweet roll thing that I never ever heard of before. He's like, "You're just gonna love it. Just trust me." But every time Johnny and I would go downtown for like a concert or go downtown, for the bar or whatever, we would always stop here. He would always give you a little takeout, to go thing. He's like, "You could go sit outside my restaurant. I don't care where you eat it." Very laid back individual. But if you want really, really good food, that place is off the charts. Amazing.
Everyone needs a culinary friend. You need someone that you can go eat with, someone that's adventurous, someone that knows things that you don't or whatever, because you need a guide when you go to a place you've never been to. It's really hard to just walk into a restaurant of a cuisine that you've never been to. And so that kind of keeps people from going to some of these places. They're like, I don't know, it might be a terrible meal, it might be a really different meal, I don't want to take a chance at spending $25 and not eating it at all or hating it or whatever. And so you have a friend, somebody that you really can trust, is like, is it good? And they're gonna be like, listen, you get the number 10 and get the sandwich, you're gonna love it. Those kinds of people. And so I've got a friend at work now that he's just awesome, and so he's showing me around all kinds of like that. That's really important. Have somebody that you can do. I mean, if you're willing to just give it a shot and dive into a place you've never been to, but it's really cool. So find somebody, buddy up and go to these places and check it out. And wherever you are, I guarantee if you Google, minority owned restaurants or something like that for where your region is and where you live, someone is keeping track of that kind of stuff. Someone is trying to support those communities, and it's really not that hard to find. So you just do what you can, and just stay away from Applebee's.
Tonight we avoid Applebee's.
Yeah. I don't care if there's 2 for $20. It's still Applebee's.
In that vein,
have you had their brisket tacos before, Hannah? I'm asking you. Have you had their brisket tacos? Come on.
I used to eat all the time. I haven't had any of their new menu offerings because I'm trying to stay away from processed foods.
Well then,
all right.
Their cheese returns back to a cube if you let it cool.
In the vein of wanting to support, now this is focused on Black-owned businesses in Canada and Calgary specifically that I found, because as you guys got mentioning this, I was like, hey, I saw something about this the other day. I think it was on Reddit. So I just quickly Googled Calgary Black-owned restaurants, and one of the top links that came up was a Canadian National News Syndicate's website and a collection that they had, but even better was a link to afrobiz.ca, so AFROBIZ.ca, and you can follow the links here, and it'll have Black-owned businesses and Black entrepreneurs from all across Canada, and it provides links for a variety of large and not so large cities, so Toronto, Halifax, Ottawa, Montreal, Winnipeg, Calgary, that type of thing. And I remember this because I had seen the list of Calgary Black-owned bakeries, grocery stores, restaurants, and one of them I've actually eaten at. And as much as I'm not a huge fan of spicy food, it was still really, really good. It was simply Irie, and it's more of a Caribbean themed restaurant, and just was really good. And from when I was there, I do remember that none of the staff were white, and so it is a great way to kind of support your local Black community, and just a way of saying,
thanks,
we support you. Yeah. We want to, we want you to know that we see you and we value you in the community, because really that's going to go a lot further than, just doing nothing or hitting retweet or posting
Yeah.
just a black square on Instagram type of thing.
Did
So-
you see the football player who was walking and protesting or whatever, and he had the sign that says like Black Lives or said matter is the minimum. We appreciate you, we love you, you're important. Like it was just one of those things that like I hadn't seen anybody with that message before. It's like Black Lives Matter is the minimum that should happen. And like it should be you are appreciated, you are noticed, you are part of the community. Like it was an awesome thing. And I was just like some football team was walking with it. I don't know. It just random thought that was awesome.
And let's remember that this is a great way to also to support not only a small part of the community, but the community at large. Because you're not just donating to a small group of people. You're keeping that money in your community, so that's going towards local jobs. It's not going to some big billionaire's pocketbooks. No, that's going to, a local person who busts their ass and wants to really put something out there that they believe in and help uplift everyone around them with, their business. So absolutely get out there and support these businesses wherever you can.
Don't support restaurant hedge funds.
and I also want to say, just because I've been to resorts in Mexico and I've heard white people talk, and don't try to foreignize or put accents on things. If you don't know how to say it or you say it wrong, just admit it. Just say it and let them correct you. And when they correct you, try to slow down and pronounce things properly. I mean, because I'm a stickler for pronouncing things properly, so I'm kind of guilty of this, I'll admit. But I will not go to Mexico and order Dos Pina Coladas because I'm not Karen, who's there with her 3 kids because she's fighting with her husband and wanted to get away or whatever. So that's that go out and support them, but also. It's not just with your money, it's also with your attitude and your behavior. So don't try to make yourself seem worldly. White people, just stop, okay? The bar is so low for how to not be a shitty white person. It is literally impossible for us to not cross it or get over it, and yet we still somehow manage to constantly fall underneath this bar. Like let's just try to be better human beings, please.
So speaking to that, another site that we had was there's an indie gaming site where they've had over 740 games donated, and essentially you can donate as much money as you want. You can get I guess minimum $5. Sorry, but you can get all these awesome games that are like indie type games. They won't work in your Steam, but they will work basically as a direct download. So here's another organization, and as of today, they have raised $3.5 million.
Awesome.
And that is all
That's so
going
cool.
to the NAACP Legal Defense Fund and a community bail fund. So if you're more of a gamer and you want a little bit of something, these are people that have donated their art to help fund racial inequality. So
Wow.
Yay.
That's pretty cool.
there we go. So before the next thing to get into is kind of what is the difference between Canadian and American police, I guess.
Besides
that's
the
probably
hats.
the best.
Besides
the
hats.
hats and the uniforms.
Well,
and-
that
Stop
depends.
boots.
Now, there is an important distinction to make. So a lot of people, they think Canadian police and they imagine the Mounties with their ridiculous pants that make them look like they have deformed quadriceps and all of that. That's just part of their ceremonial garb, I assure you. But the RCMP is the Canadian federal police force. What they do is
looks
what
like
the
you have
role of
older cars too.
it's some of them. So they're the federal police force. They're provided to areas that can't afford their own police force.
You get your own Pinto.
They exist. Typically, you'll see them in smaller towns and that type of thing. But they do obviously corroborate with other police forces across Canada. However, in major cities like Calgary, Edmonton, Toronto, Vancouver, I believe, you'll find independent police forces. So we have the Calgary Police Service, which actually, from what I understand in conversation with some of the people that have worked in their labs, has one of the most well-funded forensics labs in North America, to the point where I guess other precincts across the states, such as Nevada and Las Vegas, will actually correspond with our lab just to work, which is kind of a neat thing to think that, we're doing the science. I like the science. We get to do the science.
Man, we lost the science too.
We're trying. But also what's really is interesting is that Calgary Police Service is the only police service in Canada, as far as I know, that can actually alter their uniform. And what that means is that during the Stampede, so the 10 days out of the year where the only song you'll hear every block blasting is Sable Horse Ride a Cowboy and my eardrums bleed, is our police, they actually change their uniforms and they wear cowboy hats, and it's kind of neat and it's kind of festive.
The horror.
But the Stampede's been canceled this year due to COVID, because it would actually bring about almost a million people into the city every year for a week. Yeah, so our population, it doesn't quite double, because a lot of Calgarians, they're like, oh, Stampede's coming, I'm taking a week off and getting the hell out. I'm not kidding. It's ridiculous. Like the number of Calgarians that just up and leave. Oh, I typically just kind of work and then go where I need to go and then spend the rest of my time hiding, because it's the same thing year after year. But anyways, so the Calgary
what is it? You stay at home, the stay at home rule during the stay at home during the American hillbilly influx.
Actually, so there is a rodeo that comes with it, and it's very, very well known, very prestigious. Big prizes are won in the rodeo world. They bring in some of the biggest names in, like chuck wagon races, barrel races, all those other rodeo events.
So I have a little story. This is a before COVID story. But
Never.
I
think I've been to one.
So this is a BC story.
Yeah.
Before COVID.
Before COVID, yeah. And BC, it doesn't work, man. Bible already stole that. Well, I guess is it BCE? I don't know. Anyway,
I don't know.
I was on one of the planes back, and this was in February. I was on a plane back from Texas, and there was a guy. So there's 3 seats, right? And typically when I book my seat, I always try to book an end seat because I'm fat and I like to stick my feet in the aisle, and I don't care what anybody says because I usually just sleep the whole way back. And it was a later flight, and it was a Friday flight. I got screwed because I booked the wrong day, blah, blah, blah. So I'm on this flight with it was Thursday night, sorry. And I was on the flight with this guy, and you make chit chat, and he was talking about how he's basically like an official judge for these rodeo type things, and he travels the United States and Canada and actually like judges at these things. And he was trying to explain to me how it worked, and I'll be honest with you, I had enough to drink. I probably didn't grasp enough of it. But he was actually trying to explain like point values and different things to me, as well as he was trying to, explain what goes into setting them up. So essentially he gets there and they're so underpaid to some extent. They have to help, set these things up. So they help set the rodeo up. So they're usually there a day in advance. They work the rodeos. They have a day of teardown and they fly back.
Yeah.
And this dude was fully decked out, in cowboy boots, cowboy hat. I don't know how he got through security with half that stuff, but he did. So, kudos to him.
Texas,
yeah. Well, no, they're strict in Texas at those security points, man. You'd be in.
Well, if he was white, it's fine.
There you go. That's true. But it was just kind of anyway. So, long story short, you mentioned that they have these things, right?
Yeah.
And by them having these things, it's funny that I ran into a guy that just happened to work at some of these, and I guess I didn't know they were popular in Canada. Otherwise, I would have asked him, what does he do when he goes to Canada?
Besides hang out with 19-year-olds,
dude.
Hey, shh. Let's not think about that. Oh boy. Yeah, so that's just kind of a neat little thing, and yeah, I was planning on going into the into the Stampede later on. I figure as a filler for the fact that there is no Stampede this year. Kind of talk a little bit about it because it is very important to Calgary's history and all of that. It stems back, it's well over 100 years now that it's happened. This is the first year since the early 1900s that it hasn't happened, and it originally started off as an exhibition, but that's, like I said, that's for later times. So that's the one. There are 10 days out of the year that the Calgary Police Service, their uniform is actually switched up from the typical uniform and hat, and includes cowboy hats. And they actually, from what I understand, are one of the only police forces in Canada that still uses horses. Ironically enough, we have the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and they don't really use horses as much, but we do.
We actually had the Cleveland Mounted Police like right next to where I work. Like it's within like a quarter of a mile or something like that. So like on a good warm day, you can smell the horses.
Oh yeah. Oh,
I was like, wow, the horses. They're just looking for some crowd to go disperse. I my assumption is they've been relatively happy of late, but
yeah.
I don't know. Cleveland had its moments.
I still remember when I wasn't quite used to the horse smell. I dated a girl who literally lived on an acreage that had a barn and worked at a barn that housed a slew of horses and mucking out those stalls. I walk into those places now and I go, oh yeah, that's not so bad. And everybody's just kind of like, I can't breathe. And I'm like, yeah, that wears off soon. Don't worry, you'll be fine. Just roll around.
I'm from Hudsonville, so I mean, we had the Hudsonville Fair every year. It was a big thing. I mean, even though I never participated in any of the 4-H stuff, it was always that you wanted to go meet people and hang out and do whatever you wanted to do. You went to the Hudsonville Fair every year. That was a thing. And then when I lived in Ohio, it was kind of the same thing. 4-H was a big thing. Again, not for me, but like one of my really close friends, his parents owned a horse farm, and they did 4-H every year. And in fairness, that's probably the first place I ever tasted alcohol or smoked a cigarette at. So, and I definitely was not anywhere near of age. So,
you see that cow right there? Have a sip of this moonshine.
It's gonna look awful purty like.
They all like crappy beer, and that's probably where I found my distaste for beer was there.
It happens. I don't when you go to some of the smaller events and things like that, or like the big ag fairs or something like that. It's a different thing. So like a lot of times when I think fair, I'm from a relatively urban area when I was younger in Farmington Hills, burb of Detroit. Like when they said fair or when they said the community thing, it was like, oh, the twirly things with Joe Dirt in charge. I know what those are. But like I came out to West Michigan when I was 14, and I tell you what, the first time I ever played baseball on a field next to a cow farm, that was an eye-watering experience. I tell you what, that was a whole different thing. And then the fairs are the same way. It's like, oh, here's the fair, and then you hear a horn honk, and you'd be like, what's going on? It's like, now it's time for the auction. It's like, I don't know what's about to happen. I'm terrified. Are they auctioning off people? What is happening? Like, no, everybody's got their, their animals and all that kind of stuff. It's cool to a certain degree, but it's like one of those things. I don't know. Animal husbandry is just an alien concept to me. I'm not particularly like a vegetarian or vegan or any of that kind of stuff. But when you think about it, it's like, here, this thing that I've loved and taken care of, will you buy it so you can kill it? Like, you know what I mean? Like it's what it kind of feels like. It's like I've got the biggest sow in the at the fair. I'm gonna make the most money. It's like you're selling your friend. You're selling Susie. And so just for eating. Yeah,
kind of reminds me of like those tales from the Crypt Keeper that they did for kids, and there was the one where it was it was a spin-off or a parody or whatever.
Wait.
And
they have a Tales for the Crypt for kids. Seriously?
Yeah, it's a cartoon.
But it's
I
for
remember
kids
that.
and not adult.
It's aimed more towards kids.
You just derailed the whole show. It's like it is now officially gone crazy.
I've done worse. But yeah, and it basically it was there was a pig, but its bottom legs were missing, and they asked the farmer, and the farmer said, "Well, this pig saved our lives, and you don't eat a good pig all at once." So that was where I was going on that tangent.
Yeah, Tales from the Crypt Keeper was the name
Yeah.
of the animated show. Yeah, no, it's
All right, I'm gonna look that. I got that on my notes to look up later because I
And-
own
yeah.
every one of the Tales from the Crypt series. Just so you know, my buddy bought
It
that
looks like
series
there's
for
Tales
Christmas
from the
one
Crypt
year.
Keeper and Tales from the Crypt animated. There's two different things. So you're gonna go spend like all kinds of money now.
Well, I
Or-
own the
or you
original
could torrent it.
series.
Yeah, or you could just torrent Pirate Eye.
YouTube's.
see. Anyway, let's move on.
Yeah, let's do it.
So, you reviewed Canadian Police, did you there, Keith?
I did a little bit of a look because I was kind of curious. My wife had she had said something, and I was like, if I want to make any comments about that, I should probably make sure I have at least a little bit of an idea what the hell I'm talking about. She's smarter than I am, so I usually trust her opinion, but I figure I should, just have something to stand on other than, words. And essentially, Canada, one of the biggest differences between Canadian policing and American policing, other than the, masturbatory militarization of it all, is in Canada, there is a federal law that's followed. And as opposed to in the States where it's kind of like, you're obsessed with states' rights and all of that. And we have the Canadian Police Information Center, and this is a way to a federal information center, I guess, for police across the nation. So precincts work together and all of that, because Canada has to live up to its stereotypes every once in a while. Not to say that we are completely free from the bigotry and racism and police brutality, but one of the interesting articles that Tanner did bring forward was there is kind of a lacking data with the tracking police brutality, specifically race-fueled police brutality, like what we see in the States. With everything that's been going on, is it seems you can't go 1 week without another unarmed innocent black person being murdered by a police officer. And in Canada, not quite as sensationalized, probably because we're too busy sitting here eating popcorn, watching the States, thinking that we're like, oh, that's not here, but it is. It very much is. But the one thing that it does say here that I have found is that in various areas there are higher populations of Indigenous peoples, which are disproportionately represented in terms of legal issues. So while in the States it's primarily you see a lot of white on black violence, in Canada it's white on Indigenous tends
Australia
to be more
as well.
the thing. Yeah, exactly.
That weird connection to the British monarchy.
Yeah, those Brits, they really screwed things up. Trying to run the world, and they ended up throwing it all to hell. Cool.
It's the
So-
Queen's fault.
Yeah. Now there is one thing, and I've been prepping it for a little bit because it's if I'm going to talk about it, it's a little bit of a difficult topic that requires a lot of sensitivity and care. And so I've been very, very ginger about it, is the missing and murdered Indigenous women's report. Yeah. Basically, Indigenous women are 12, I think is it 12 times or 12% more likely? There's a bit of a difference. Yeah. Oh, crap. I've got too many links open. No, I lost my information here. Essentially, Indigenous women are far more likely to be the ones who suffer, domestic violence, who do go missing, who are, murdered, essentially. And that's something that, needs to be addressed and dealt with. And again, it's the missing and murdered Indigenous women, women and girls. There's an entire website about it. There was a report done years ago, which, again, I am working on it.
And it's just gone.
Essentially it's something that was noticed, was the fact that women who were of Indigenous descent suddenly seemed to have a lot more. All of a sudden, we noticed that there was a lot more of them turning up. That they had been missing, that they were murdered, and that there wasn't as much of a social call to do anything about it. And a strong portion of that is to do with the fact that there's a lot of racism against Indigenous peoples in Canada. as I've mentioned previously, there's a lot of sentiment that, the residential schools are over. You have your reserves. Y'all get your money every year, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And
that feeling is still in the United States as well, with all the Native American reservations and everything like that. It's a weird thing that's consistent.
Is the racisms?
Yeah, well, it's just like a thing. Like you would think that the people would see those people as people who originally came from these lands, as far back, way far back, beyond anything else. And it's just like that should be like a point of respect. And it's not. It's the exact opposite, which has always been confusing to me. I don't really understand where it comes from, but
that's the arrogance of being the victor, right?
Yeah, I think that's kind of what it is. It's like this kind of situation here where it's just like there's a bunch of information. It could be sex trafficking. It could be groups that are doing this. It could be culture or issues along the lines of the women being brutalized and domestic violence or whatever. Like there's just a bunch of information. That information was kind of like put together in a report that is no longer available, or they need to make a report of it, or what was the situation there? It sounded like you said that there was a missing report.
There is a report. There's an entire document that was done up by the federal government a few years ago. And what it's been done is, or what the purpose of it is to draw attention. I guess you hadn't been around when I was talking about truth and reconciliation efforts in Canada, which has been kind of something that's been had a little bit more emphasis, not so much now in Alberta because we got rid of a government that actually gave a damn, and this report was a part of it, trying to draw attention to the fact this is a community that is suffering immensely. It's not only is it suffering from the modern racism, but it's still suffering from the intergenerational trauma that's gone on, and the fact that it was basically a cultural genocide on top of another genocide that happened with them, and they're still living through that trauma, trying to find their own identity. And how easy is that when you live in a society that condemns everything you are and treats you like the butt end of a joke because, oh, look, it's just another drunk native, when in reality, that's somebody who may have been raised in a household that was abusive because the parents were abused and they just didn't receive the education to know how to break that cycle, and this has been an ongoing problem. And is
so
something
the police are just kind of like known for not really helping or being part of like
basically,
the solution at all?
Essentially, that's the main thing, is that there has been kind of from what I understand anyways, there's been a general lack of interest in the from the police services, because just like in the jokes that come out of Hollywood about how well, if the girl who's missing is white, she'll be everywhere. Everybody will be looking for her. If she's not, well, good luck. So it's it is unfortunately very similar up here, and it is, it is a great shame because I kind of take pot shots at the States, but at the end of the day, and it's in my house too, and it's something that we as a people do need to address. And now that Canada our population is only growing because of immigration into Canada, as the white population
leaves America. Why we leave America? Saying, I'm looking for a card.
Can't say I blame you.
But it sounds like the police force itself in Canada has a little bit more restrictions, or I guess a higher ladder to climb to get into the position where you were saying when we were talking earlier. So like they have more requirements as far as education and adequacy and capabilities, but it sounds like there's also some of the same kinds of problems. So these are human problems, not so much specifically policing problems. We kind of need to change what we think.
I would 100% disagree with you. I think it is police style problems, and that is the big thing. I mean, here you go.
The system itself.
Yes, and the way systems are set up, and yes, maybe you have stronger regulations. Maybe you have stronger requirements. Maybe you have more testing. Maybe you have all these other things. And I'll be honest, we'll talk about this in a little bit. But those things have been tried in America too, and they still don't work. Now we are a lot larger of a country, unfortunately, and we don't have as cool of TV shows as Canada does, unfortunately. But
Well, yeah.
you know, there's still this. I mean, this study right here by Ontario Human Rights Commission essentially says Black Torontonians, and I don't know how if that's
Torontonians?
Say Torontonians. There you go.
Close-
that sounds
close
weird.
enough.
Anyway,
It is weird.
People of color from Toronto are 20 times more likely to be shot by the police than white people are.
Mhm.
Here, the week before this article was written, a 29-year-old black woman died after her mother called the police and asked them to take her daughter to an addiction and mental health center. Here you go.
Mhm.
This right here, and this is
I'm sure hearing about that.
this goes into kind of what we're looking at having a conversation with for the rest of the show, right?
Yeah.
Because this here is explaining why we need to defund police departments and why we need to look at more creative ways for policing in the United States and in Canada. Because
They were called for an assistance, and it escalated into a violent
Exactly, and
situation. like
It ended with somebody dying.
Yeah, it's the opposite of what should have happened.
Yeah. So just another big thing, and I know it varies across, again, states' rights. That each whatever precinct is going to have its own requirements for what it takes to be a police officer. But there's a federal standard that's held in Canada as part of the CPIC, and essentially it is fairly straightforward. They require a grade 12 diploma or equivalent, Canadian citizen, landed immigrant status, permanent resident status, at least 18. You have your proper driver's license, no unpardoned criminal convictions, no criminal charges pending before the courts, no criminal activity within the last 3 years, both detected and undetected, which that last part is kind of laughable, but that's its own thing.
Have you done anything that we don't know about?
no.
New. Although I do like just
got me.
an anecdote on that one is somebody I used to be friends with. I know they were applying to join the Calgary Police Services, and they were telling me about an issue that they had during their testing where they were just telling me about an incident where they were doing their lie detector test, and essentially he goes, well, there was this one thing that I guess I didn't end up confessing or admitting to them because I didn't remember it at the time, and now it's kind of being held against me. And as he's explaining it to me, it essentially sounded like what's commonly referred to as an implanted memory, where you're not quite 100% sure, but it sounds like it could have been true enough. So it just kind of sits there and you go, okay, well, I guess it's true. Yeah. And to me, that really sits poorly. Now, unless that is just kind of a nuanced test where it's trying to detect, like how confident are you in your convictions and all of that? How comfortable are you backing yourself up in a gray area and trying to make black or white decisions, which has its own issues, but that's its own thing. But in Calgary anyways, one thing that they do look for is, somebody who's got a post-secondary education. And basically they want to know that you're smart enough that you've challenged yourself and you've got a degree in something. Typically law is preferred because, you want somebody in law enforcement who understands what the law is. And that you've worked in the community, so you've done volunteering, and you've worked to develop, show yourself as a responsible person, that you're trustworthy in the community and all of that. So you are able to build communities. Because in one of the initiatives that I've seen come out of our police service, anyways, in Calgary, is more of a push towards community building, as opposed to just policing and showing a force, which. If I were to be brutally honest, if there was more of a community initiative behind any type of policing, I would be more inclined to support that, simply because that's going to focus more on, building the community instead of, you bad, bye. That type of just, shoot first, ask later mentality, because it's going to spend more time focusing on the nuance and going through the gray areas to try to develop the best possible outcome for whatever has happened. My friend who helped me with my Truth and Reconciliation, how I met him was I was his personal trainer at our gym, but he at the time was running a program for Indigenous men in prison who were perpetrators of domestic abuse. And he was telling me about the program that he runs, and he actually had shared it with me, and I went through it, and it was actually a really well thought out program, because it focuses not just on saying, you've abused your family, you've abused your wife, you go to jail, do not pass go, do not collect $200. It's, you have engaged in this type of behavior that we see as damaging to not just our community on this in the microcosm, but also on the whole. Like you're not. We want to help you become somebody who can contribute to society, and that type of restorative justice is something that a friend of mine, who's actually the reason why I know about the Murdered and Missing Indigenous Women and Girls report, is because she went to school with a girl who wound up on that report. Because she went missing and then was found murdered, and there was not a whole lot that was done to draw attention to it until all of a sudden it got attention drawn to it by somebody else. But this is community building as opposed to law enforcement and incarceration, and focusing on recidivism, and more focusing on healing and reparation, and again building. So that would be if a police force were to show more of an interest in community building than militarization, then I think that might be why we focus less on trying on defunding the police, and why we might want to say, hey, they're here to do some good. Wouldn't you say, Tanner?
There's a natural segue.
I would say yes, but at the same time, I would say I think we still need to find a better use for that money, right? I think sometimes when you get to the point where things are just broken, you can't fix them anymore. You just can't do it. There's only so much you can fix. In my company, we went through, we picked up a client who will remain nameless, but we picked up a client that was owned by a PE firm, right? And this is the first client we ever picked up from this firm. We were very excited. We went, full tilt into there. This is throwing a lot of resources and money at it. And in the long run, it screwed us. We went into litigation, all sorts of crazy stuff, right? And the big thing we learned out of it was that we tried to fix them, and the PE company that owned them only cared about a certain revenue. When the first regime that brought us in didn't perform appropriately, they considered anybody with that regime as bad. But the problem was they're stuck in contracts, right? It's contract hell for these people to get out of. But we learned a big lesson that says, hey, we made a wrong decision as a business picking this client. This is not an ideal client, right? And sometimes there's certain things that are broke that can't be fixed. So we cut ties with them. Like my resources stopped going to that client after a certain amount of time, because it's like, we're not getting anything back.
Yeah,
They're not working with us.
Yeah, sometimes you have to recognize a bad investment and simply cut your losses and move on. Like it's a real thing that happens all the time. And a lot of places and a lot of situations throughout this country right now are bad investments that simply need to be they need to be cut, and you cut your losses and just move on. You need to change the entire system and rebuild. I'm sure there's going to be a variety of things that we're going to talk about this, and there's a couple of things that NPR has been talking about that have been really good. But the big thing is it looks like you want to start with just like, what do people mean when they say defund? Because I've seen people, Ed Buckner from American Atheist is talking about using demilitarize instead of defund. There's all kinds of people that are like fighting the semantics of this situation.
Yeah. And so I have there's two things that I want to go through before we get into this, because I will go through, let's walk through it. I'm okay with that. The first thing is where did defund the police come from, right? And if black activists are talking about this and explaining to us that you don't understand what it means, at some point, is it not just us trying to tell them how they should say their own words? I mean, at some point, it's like, do you know what defund means, right? What is the meaning of defund, and all these other things? Because there's a lot of words that go into it, right?
Well, I keep hearing abolish. I keep hearing the right saying we want to abolish the police. No more police, just none, no more. That's what they were saying. And I actually had multiple conversations with people throughout the day. There's like, they want, because obviously I work in Ohio, they want to they want to abolish the police. No more police, just none. And like, that's tied into this. So like, this is not
Yeah.
abolish.
So defunding means simply to stop providing the money to pay for something. That's one definition. Another definition is to stop the flow of funds, right? Another definition is to withdraw financial support. So when we talk about the fund, we're not talking specifically about saying all funds are gone. It's not an absolute. And this is what drives me nuts about the fucking atheist community is these people don't like these absolutes. They're like, you can't pin me in an absolute box, but yet they use them when they don't like the argument. And that's what happened. There's a gentleman, and I'm kind of surprised he didn't unfriendly. And we had him on the show, I don't know, like 4 years ago. Like when we first started out, he was coming out of religion, had a great story to tell. And, you know, he got very upset saying, you're just using the wrong word. And finally, it was kind of like, do you understand that at some point we just got to stop saying you're using the wrong word? We both know what we're talking about. Why don't we move on? And what are we going to do to take action? Because we should stop policing how you say it because we feel this is the way you're going to garner more votes or more attention. Because if that was the case, black people wouldn't be in civil unrest. White people wouldn't be in civil unrest. We wouldn't have this civil unrest if we all understood what was going on and wanted to move past. At some point, things didn't change, therefore we have civil unrest. That's what happens, right? That's
everybody doesn't have an absolutely uniform, exactly perfect argument. There's all kinds of different ways that people are describing what's going on, and since there isn't like perfect unity, it's not the same. It's different. They're you know what I mean? It's not cohesive. There's just so many different ways to describe it. And like defund itself, when it comes to that, like most people understand that defund, in my opinion, is that they want to reduce this overflow of money or overflow of funding for militarized type things into the police. They should simply be a police force that is used to keep the community safe or whatever. Like when they're saying defund, they want to remove some of the excessive things that are purchasing these. I saw there was someone pointing out that they have the rubber bullet guns, essentially a grenade launcher, and it has an $800 sight set up for hundreds of yards of accuracy. Well, these guns are not particularly accurate, and there's no point in having that sight on this particular weapon. It's good for short melee and for essentially neutralizing a relatively distant opponent. I mean, I've seen videos of them using them point blank and destroying people and using these weapons incorrectly, which is another reason why we're talking about this. But like the defund situation, everybody kind of knows what that means. We want to stop feeding them when they don't particularly behave, and that's kind of the idea.
Yeah.
And in some cases, we need like a complete overhaul, but like that nuance is not that complicated. But people will grab a word and just hold it.
Just as a brief aside, there is working in customer service. I have learned that the most frustrating thing is that if you don't use the right language, though, people just they can't be bothered because they'll get themselves hung up on key words. So on the one hand, I understand the desire to use proper or terms that might be more in line with what your
Marketable?
point is. Sure, if you want to go down that road, but also because you don't want to.
It's a white normalcy.
Well, that too.
Well, there's you've also got that going too, right? It's but on the one hand, like I understand that using the right language is the difference between Karen going, "Oh, okay, I am at least getting my money back," and her going, "Well, I'm not getting my money back soon enough." Right? Is just unfortunately there's
Keith, I'm going to stop you there. I mean, but doesn't that show the fact that Karen A doesn't give two fucks about learning about it? B obviously didn't care about the fucking movement or about people that are marginalized. And C, at some point, why the fuck are we catering to that person? Fuck that lady. Fuck these people.
I'm not trying to argue in favor of it. I'm just saying that I understand that it unfortunately it is something that is gonna. It's one of those things that people will sit there and harp on, and the people who are critical of that movement, they're going to be able to sit there and teeter on that specific word, right? It's kind of like why people won't really use the word atheist either, is just because of preconceived attachments to the word. It's frustrating as hell because people are just being like, well, that's all you want, so I don't care, and they're just writing it off. They're just distancing themselves because it's easier than actually sitting and listening to a term. It's why when I discuss politics with my family, one of the things that I've learned is that I can agree with them on a lot of things, provided that we don't use buzzwords. So you start using terms like taxes and specific names or ideologies or whatever. You just focus on taking things like by case, situation by situation, and just dealing with it on that level. That's how I found that it's easiest to at least engage, because then you find out, oh, okay, well, we're able to discuss this, but the second those buzzwords come out, then it's just like, oh my god, oh, Satan, blah 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 blah. It's incredibly frustrating for you, because you're like, no, I need you to listen. I need you to not just have this knee-jerk response. Just calm your nerves for half a second and listen to what I'm saying beyond that 2-syllable thing that I just threw at you, and that's all you focused on and ranted about for the last 20 minutes. Oh my god.
All right.
So I get what you're saying, and I'm not disagreeing with you at all. I just know that we live in an unfortunate society where language has too much and yet not enough power.
Toxic relationship with the Minneapolis Police Department, to end policing as we know it, and to recreate systems of public safety that actually keep us safe.
So they're looking to, defund police departments. What does that mean? Divesting money from local and state police budgets and reinvesting in the community, including mental health and social services. Police deputies' duties have grown to include responding to welfare checks. The majority of black police defunding say the deputies should be handled by non-violent specialists. People who are trained in drug funds or drug de-escalation and defund or de-escalation of violence.
Yep. So taking the money essentially that we use to fund the police department and some of their more extravagant, I guess, activities, and using that money in social welfare, like things that, like, it's like when we talk about the war on drugs, and other countries have invested in helping people go over addiction, and they find that they have way better results. We're kind of treating our police like that. Like, this video's got a bunch of great points.
Yep.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's the idea.
No,
here,
I don't
right?
support defunding the police.
I know you don't.
I support
know you don't.
conditioning
Bill,
federal aid to police based on whether or not they meet certain basic standards of decency and honorableness, and in fact are able to demonstrate they can protect the community and everybody in the community.
There's a reason.
I'm glad I didn't say something a minute ago.
Great law enforcement. I'm very proud of them. There won't be defunding. There won't be dismantling of our police. And there's not going to be any disbanding of our police. Our police have been letting us live in peace.
Yeah. So the reason,
the
reason I play that, and I'm sorry, like, I had to let that go. Just and hear me out a second. The reason for that is because we are at a crucial time point. There was a record high in America, maybe not Canada, but in America, there was a record high registration of people going out to vote, right? People are registering more now than they ever have in the last 8 years, right? And we had a black president, and people still didn't go out and vote for a second term. Like, it still was undervoted. We still had lots of people not go out. And here we are now at a crucial point. And you want to talk about allyship. This is where it is. And we can get into, and I would support a better candidate than Biden coming on the scene. But we can't rely on Biden. We can't rely on another character coming into play here. It's too late in the game. And I'll be honest, Bernie didn't even stand up specifically and was super aggressive about this either.
Yeah.
We won't get into that tonight because that'll be another tangent cast that will be 35 minutes of
another
both of our
10
time.
cast.
It'll be bad because I'm very disappointed. But I'm more disappointed in Biden's response, because he is the front runner. He is the one that we're supposed to bloody be electing, and he can't seem to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to deviate to the experts. Why the fuck is he not inviting more activists to his campaign right now? or just shut the fuck up. Just shut up. Just shut up, man. Just like don't talk. Like go back to your little hidey hole when you were like with COVID. And Trump's like, "Where's Biden?" And it's like somebody hid Biden's key to his house and his microphone. Just like they hide your stupid, they hide your phone because he can't get out to make stupid statements. And
that's one of the most frustrating parts about this entire situation when it comes to Joe Biden and everything. It's like people are like, listen, we need the guy that's electable. We need the guy that's going to be, recognized by everyone. That's fine. He is recognized by everyone, but he is incapable of moving to where the majority of the people in this country currently are when it comes to the left. That is not where he is. And it's a PR thing. It's a marketing thing. It's all of the BS as to why people choose who they choose and all that. And like the majority of people in this country, and especially the majority of people who are doing this protesting and stuff like that, they're not aligned with what Joe Biden is his funding and the things in his past and his history. Like these aren't going to change immediately overnight. And so the Democratic Party itself is not going to change immediately overnight. They wore those ridiculous scarves the other day, and it's just like they're putting on a show, and like you see that it does not seem to be sincere, and it's frustrating because if you're gonna run into trouble, it's insincerity in a time of vast
what they
and
call
deep
it?
sincerity.
They call it performative allyship. That's what that is.
Yeah.
We have an article on that too, by the way, in the description.
It feels rough, and it's just this is the exact thing that you need to do to alienate the few people who are on the fence. And you mentioned that more people have been registered to vote. A whole bunch of places are doing like mass voter registration when it comes to mail-ins and all that kind of stuff. Like there's a really I voted for the first time ever mail-in this past primary, and it was the greatest thing I have ever experienced in my entire life. I have never sat down with a bill with a list and gone through every single name, just Google them, see what they got, see what their information is. I spent an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours going through my ballot. And I know exactly who I voted for. I know exactly what I voted for. It was the best vote I've ever had in my life.
Did you vote for Klobuchar? Come on, man. We talked about this ahead of time. We had this conversation. This was a mistake. Stop.
God damn it, Hannah!
No, I accidentally wrote in mayonnaise. I mean,
to be fair, that's probably just going to be Biden anyways.
So either way,
I hate mayonnaise.
So vote for the Democratic Party. We will put mayonnaise on your hot dog or whatever horrible thing that they want to
do. What kind of evil villain are you? Why would you know?
All I know is
he's
it's
a rapist, and he's the front runner for the Democratic Party. So I don't. There's no excuses at this point. I almost would rather see everything burned. Because
that's the difficulty, and so what he needs to do, like Chris, what you said, like he needs to disappear. And the sad fact is that if your candidate is stronger, the less he's out there. Like he is definitely not the person you want out there, because as soon as these actual debates start, like the debates were with between Clinton and Trump, where Trump was just changing up the game. He started pacing and started standing behind her and intimidating her and like doing all of these things that are like, you need to be on your game and able to pivot and deal with this. And these are kinds of things like when it comes to like stump speech, Bernie, like he was not very good at, dealing with stuff that was out. He was very good at giving his speech and his answer, not very good at moving on his feet. I don't think Joe Biden is any better. And, people that can move and be adaptable and solve this situation and really kind of understand what's happening. I don't know which candidate is going to be the best at this. And Bernie has let me down as far as some of the things that he's recently done as far as this stuff.
Who the two were that come to mind? Elizabeth Warren and Yang. Those two were very snappy on their feet, and they've been and calm.
They've been out in these protests as well. I've seen pictures of both of them directly and actively involved. And so all of those people have they've been on the top of the list for, a bunch of people. Boyce is definitely probably proud of, being involved in this kind of stuff. So we know the Democratic leadership is kind of lacking here. We know exactly where the conservative and Republican leadership is. Like, they love this. They love the fact that we're arguing about this and not about COVID right now. This is a gift. Like I said last time, this is a gift because everybody's got their trenches. The problem is that the people in the middle that are like the Democrats aren't really doing anything to entice them right now. They're not.
Before we get too far down the rabbit hole, and I know we're already an hour 15.
We don't have to do
because I don't. No offense, I'm done talking about white toast Biden. So
yeah,
I've had enough. You gave
let's
me
talk
my
about,
fill for the week. Ugh. Anyway,
Yeah.
so here's an article that was written that talks about 5 things white people can do right now to combat white supremacy. Right, come out as an anti-racist, invite others to join you. Join the fights to defund the police, which is the big one. This is one of the things that, is the main topic that we wanted to talk about because it's local budget season right now across the country. Lots of towns are deciding where they're going to spend their resources, right? Do we really want police officers? And again, we'll get into more specific details in a minute, but do we want police officers looking at health services, having them make these decisions while they're on calls? Or do we want to increase mental health services in our community, let the community police itself to some extension, which you think libertarians would be involved with? But I almost feel like the libertarians are like the quiet white supremacists. That's what I feel like. And I guess I'm just going to throw shots across the board because...
no, I agree entirely.
That's
I
what this
agree
feels
entirely.
like. The white libertarians I know are very quiet right now. Anyway, moving on.
Don't tread on me as long as you look like me.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't step on Snick.
And one of the big things is talking about the proposed 50% of the police budget in LA, right? And giving it to a Black Lives Matter group, right? Because they are talking about how we can't fix what we're doing. Minneapolis, and again, I got another article we'll come back to in a minute, is talking about the same thing. We're not going to take all the money and eliminate the police force, which again, was that Ben Shapiro, which I wish none of you all would have ever named the other week because you have cursed my Twitter feed and he is now showing up on Facebook and Twitter because you were talking and my phone heard it. And I'm now like, he now shows up as like a tweet I would want to know about. And it's like, I don't even follow this shithead. And yet, and he retweeted this post basically of what 911 will sound like once they defund the police department, which is just absurd BS, and I will not play it on the show. I will not do it.
That's the thing, but he is young and really popular, alt-right and incel. Like, he is like a serious contender for like all of their internet love. And so like knowing what he's talking about is kind of important. And like, he's a very frustrating dude, but he's like one of those like influencers that he's actually starting to show up a lot on the main Fox News and stuff like that. Just
stop talking about him because he's gonna appear. It's like Bloody Mary, man. Stop doing it. We're moving on.
You know what? Show up. I'll show up.
Don't do it. Don't let him. Don't let him come on the show. Don't do it. No, I think I control the show, so I don't have to worry about that. Make a commitment to organize on your own or with others for the long haul. Right. Uphold the power structure of local communities. There you go. Mm-hmm. Focus on building numbers, not being right. So that's the one thing that I was arguing with the other gentleman named Chris on his Facebook page is like, all right, fine. You're right. Whatever. You defund is whatever you want to call it. Do you believe in the same thing I do? Yes. Okay. Can we get past this and actually focus on more important things than worrying about whether you feel offended because somebody didn't use the word that you like to use more and you just don't like their viewpoint on it? Get over it.
Yeah, arguing about semantics is total a black hole.
It's just a distraction. It's really just. I know what I said earlier. It is probably going to seem contradictory to this, but like semantics is just a way of distancing yourself from the argument. I mean, I know people will get hung up on words, but at the end of the day, focusing on the semantics of what's being said as opposed to the actual message is really just a way of saying, yeah, I don't want to talk about that because that makes me uncomfortable, and I don't like that.
5 syllables. Cy, Ten, Bergen, Kate.
No, stop.
I try not to.
Stop. Oh my God. You're gonna ruin everything for me.
Ooh,
gotta
can we
bring
do
those
a
Eagles
can we
out.
do an episode called Hannah Ruins Everything?
We could.
Yep,
we could.
absolutely. I
Yes,
support
And
that.
it's
and
all it'll be is just me squealing my hearing aids for 2 hours. Yeah, it'll be the worst thing ever.
No, that's I mean, ruining our lives is part of ruining everything, I guess. So there's that. Damn it. I regret this. Shit.
Well, I guess you're probably
All
gonna
right.
get Shapiro in your feed no matter what you do because
Oh, I've
Keep
already been down
mentioning
that
him.
rabbit hole.
Stop mentioning
Because-
him.
because-
He won't show
well,
up.
because Zuckerberg
He's like Beetlejuice.
Zuckerberg is sponsoring the RNC convention.
I know. And guess what? There could be a exodus from us on Facebook rather shortly here.
That was the thing. I honestly, seriously think that might be the tipping point to get me away from that page. I really do think we should do that next
let's
week.
move on. Moving past that. So you can also help resource the work of blackleg groups that are fighting for police accountability and abolition, right? So you could do a lot of these different specific things. So kind of moving into defunding the police, right? There is a website called Join Campaign Zero, right? Campaign Zero is one of the forthright sites that is talking about ending police violence in the world. And I don't know, has either of you heard about this before?
It's secondary at best. It was something that I heard, I think mentioned that either there was an interview that someone was talking about it or they were a representative of it, but it was just kind of like one of those like up first NPR. This is the cool person, bang, 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 bang. And like, I just did not have enough time to really get into what was going on.
Okay. So they in here, and this is kind of what led me down the rabbit hole, right? Is they have an agenda to end police violence, right? There's a lot of different resources in here, and there's a lot of data that goes into it. But here, this is one of the most interesting things, right? Ending for-profit policing. Who would have thought? Hey, wait, we've talked about for-profit prisons on this show. How many damn times? We talk about how capitalism ruins everything 90% of the times. Yeah, I do like this internet, and I sure as hell love my iPhone, whatever stupid iPhone version I have. And I love my Star Wars. But what I do not love in any way, shape, or form at all is the fact that a lot of this for-profit stuff is involved with policing other people. So they talk about
utility services. Police would, in my opinion, be in that. They should all not be for profit.
Yeah, they talk
mean, they
about
really
police
shouldn't.
essentially getting sued for misconduct, them paying the burden versus us as taxpayers. Establish a cap amount of revenue to be raised through mutual funds. Prohibit police from seizing cash property, which does happen, yes, all the time.
Oh, dude.
From those who have not been prohibited or convicted yet. And I think we talked about that about a year ago. I'm guessing it's about a year ago. We had this exact same damn conversation because the stupid cops are.
Well, there were some
ridiculous.
changes to certain laws. There were some challenges to whether or not you could actually do the basically when they were taking people's money. So like you can't travel with a certain amount of money in your car at any one period of time. The cops just pull you over, and then for some reason they decide to search. They find a certain amount of money. They just take it. It becomes police evidence. You are not allowed to have that much money. It's like you can't take more than $10,000 on an airplane, like those kinds of things. And in some cases, the cops can just repossess your vehicle. It really does turn into a really, really big deal when it comes to the police force ability to just seize your personal property without any actual evidence of or conviction. And that's the most important thing. It's like people always say, like, oh, they convicted drug dealer. Well, actually, they were arrested on suspicion, and it never actually happened. And their $50,000 SUV just disappeared into the system. Like, it's a big deal. And this is a great example of that. So like that for-profit thing that they're mentioning about the for-profit policing is that if you are a police officer and you do something absolutely horrible, they sue the police station, that cop himself is not representative of any of the financial damages. It's all taxpayers. So I've heard that being a thing. Like one of the incentives to make police behave better is the fact that every time they get sued, the police station gets sued for millions of dollars, and the city loses those millions of dollars in their budget. And so the city itself would try to reform things to try to stop those lawsuits from happening so that it would have money. But it just seems like they don't really do that. They just assume like, oh man, this is really bad. We should maybe fix it a little bit, and then hopefully that'll never happen again. And it just happens and happens and happens. It's just like it's incentivized improperly. If it becomes a direct personal thing, like if you do something bad, you are responsible fiscally and as far as jail time or whatever is concerned. That changes, a personal responsibility level. It's like if you post online, one of the things that we talked about in the past on this show, that the internet itself should not allow for anonymous users. If you did that, if like there was like a social security number for the internet where no matter what you did in some way, shape or form, anything you do on the internet can be traced back to you as the internet user X1516 or whatever the hell, like that can be, a thing. Like you had a social security number for the internet, that would end bullying and some of that kind of stuff to a certain degree, because you can't be that anonymous dick that just does a pot shot. Well, a police officer would be the same situation. Like you're accountable. It's you and yourself for what your actions are, not the city. I really like that.
Yep. Another one.
Sorry. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
It was just a comment from a commentary from another podcast that I was listening to. Is they were talking about various steps that should be taken with the police. Is there should be punishments, punitive measures taken against officers who conveniently have their body cams off. Their arms are covering it or whatever. In instances, especially where brutality is alleged, and suddenly there's no footage of it because it was off, or I turned it off in the bathroom, forgot to turn it on. Well, sorry, because you proved that you are not a responsible member of the community in the role that you've decided to be in.
Why is there an on-off switch?
No longer. Well, there's also that.
That's
too.
my question. Why is there an on-off switch? In all reality,
like as a cop, you forget to leave your thing, your body cam on, and as a result, evidence is tampered with. Guess what? Yeah. You're off the force. You're not paid administrative leave. You're out because you do not represent the community. You're representing yourself. Yeah. You're not holding yourself accountable.
There's a police chief that was just fired last weekend. There was a shooting, and there was no footage at all of all the body cams. Like the police chief was just fired immediately.
So
that's awesome.
So there is footage. And we're not going to go down that rabbit hole because I have an aggressive. I spent an hour and a half, and I actually took and edited the video, the outside video. There's no cop video because the cops are shitheads, but there is video of inside the restaurant as well as outside the restaurant. And I actually took the two and I put them together.
Cool.
Because I do video editing shit, and I thought about releasing
we'll
it, but
post it and share it. I can't wait to see it. In all reality, like it really does need to be seen. If there is nothing out there,
I don't know if there is or not. I just know that because I have friends from the community, the podcast community, who live in that area and who were at some of the protests. They weren't there at that one, but they were at the protests in that same city because they lived there.
Yeah.
That's why it became a little. I kept seeing it come up, and then finally I was like, well, you can see that, and the funny thing is. And this is where it does get very dicey, right? In the video, you can see the shop owner, and some of the other people in that shop. Somebody has a gun because there's a gun on the floor after the dude's killed. There is a gun, but if you line up the actual shots of the firing, you can actually hear it fire before the guy goes, or right as the guy goes out there, right before he goes out there, and the chances of it either being some outside shots, maybe not cops because you can't tell, but the outside shots, somebody could have fired some shots and the cops thought it was them. You can actually see bullets coming in and like the spray from where they hit, like basically they're hitting the cement wall, right? And you can see that, and you can see all of that happen, and you can see that. Here's the basic fact: these people were being peaceful. I don't care whether they carry guns or not, because this proves the whole point of those white protesters at the Capitol walking around with machine guns. These people were cooking and hanging out at a restaurant. They were not wandering the streets. They didn't have a bunch of signs. They weren't screaming and hollering. There wasn't a bunch of music playing. I mean, there might have been music. I don't know, because you can't hear the music. But there is all of that, right? And you can see where the cops approached this area because they decided that that personal lot had to be broken up. And all these people are fleeing inside. You know, they're like, oh, shit, here comes the cops. Yeah. One of the ladies looks like she gets shot. The owner comes out, starts waving at the police. Whether he has a gun in his hand is inconsequential. Whether he fires it at the police is inconsequential. If you fire at a restaurant, they should have the right to fire back. And this is where it talks about body cams. This is where it talks about de-escalation. And instead, because the police have all these multiple huge guns that they can just shoot at you, and, you know, they're there, they can take you out. That's a problem.
It's Breonna Taylor's boyfriend. Someone unmarked cars, non-uniformed police kicked in the door, shot his girlfriend, and he returned fire. He's actually been arrested for attempted murder.
And like, where was the Second Amendment who are saying, oh, no, he was exerting his rights? You know?
Yeah, I mean, they were in his house. It's a different story. And so, like, what it is like if you hear the, you know, the Second Amendment right activists who are like super into all this kind of stuff, and you know they hear these situations, they hear this kind of stuff where there are African Americans or there are minority people that are carrying, and they just get lit up by the police. And it's like, you're not protecting that amendment. Or when you do a protest or whatever, you're not a constitutionalist. You're not protecting the First Amendment. You just like guns, and you don't want anybody to mess the fact that you like guns. And that's basically all it is. You don't want other people to be protected. You don't want their amendments, their constitutional rights to be protected. You want yours because you like that particular thing. And
you like your boom boom sticks.
If it's not consistent across the board for all people, then it isn't. You're not supporting the Second Amendment or the First Amendment. You want you to have your thing, and then everybody else is just free for their own. You're like the worst kind of libertarian. But so like the body camera thing, like that's a resource that we have, and something that you got pulled up here. It really is something that you hear about all these cases where it's there, and it's something that in the end there's something that gets in the way of a really great piece of evidence, and it's sad every time that you hear about it failing.
It's infuriating.
And for me, this one right here, this should be an instant termination and a conviction. And we talk about there should be a police list of violent police offenders, right? Period.
I love the transparency in the Democratic bill. Actually, it says that it removes the protection of any kind of police misconduct charges. Like those become public record.
Yeah,
definite.
And I think the big thing here is looking at that. Like, this is where I think this should go farther. Is saying, hey, screw you. If your camera's off, I don't care if a superior told you to. You should quit. Sue them.
Yeah.
That's my opinion. If my superior told me I should go in and manipulate data to sell to a client, and I did it, I'm still going to get convicted for fraud. Hello? Yeah. Like, it's not like any different. Hello? I mean, come on.
It's like the argument for the rookies that were with Derek Chauvin. Like, there were two guys that were with him that were 1 year or 2 years, something like that. They told him, like, stop, take your knee off his neck or whatever. And people are trying to find a way or find a level. It's like the movie Training Day when Ethan Hawke, like, he does the PCP, he's involved in all that kind of stuff. Like, he pushed back, but he didn't push back hard enough to say no, to stop it completely, because the culture itself, the structure of it is so authoritarian, it's so top down, that if you push back hard enough, you are essentially null and void, and you will be removed. You will be excommunicated from the community. And that particular community, like that kind of culture, that is a toxic culture. It is an unsustainable culture. And that's one of the things that they're talking about training. Like you have it up there right now. Training itself cannot exist if questioning the people who are in charge automatically results in either you being completely shut down or nothing happening, and they get to continue what they're doing, even if they're doing something absolutely illegal. There have been a couple of cases where someone did something illegal in one of these the protests, or whatever. A police officer saw another police officer do something openly illegal and arrested that police officer. You know, pin him down, handcuff him, whatever. Like that happens so rarely, but that is your job. it is a police officer's job when you see something illegal, and like that kind of training thing here. That this is a one of those examples of something that has to change. And that's the defund, abolish, rebuild, whatever.
Yeah, and I think the big push here, right, is and we talked about this a little bit last week, but if you think about it, if you have 100 cops and 10 of them are bad, and 100 of them stand by and don't do anything about the 10 of them, you have 110 bad cops. No questions. It's not. This is not a hard concept, people. I'm fucking sorry, but like I shouldn't fucking have to tell you this. And like at my company, the difference is when we have a bad apple or a couple of bad apples that aren't pulling their weight, and I bring it up to upper management, and they don't do anything about it, they're part of the problem. But the difference is that person over there is just being lazy, not killing people. In the police community, they're policing and harming and killing and doing all sorts of crazy shit, and that's the problem.
Yeah, there's a tweet from a guy named Jeff Kanata. I actually saved this on my phone. He says that I love people who use the phrase "a few bad apples," have literally no idea the idiom they're referencing. The full saying is "a few bad apples spoil the whole bunch."
And they do. I have proof of it in my house because if my kid doesn't eat the apples I bought a week ago, the apples I bought this week do start going bad faster. And then I get pissy. I have to put the new apples on the bottom and the bad apples on the top, and let you eat the bad ones before the good ones.
The same thing, whatever. Anyways, there's a response from this person, Vault Weaver at Vault Weaver. It says, and imagine if the good apples pulled the bad ones back to the barrel when someone came to remove them, then buried them deeper and lied to protect them. You might be justified in saying, fuck apples then. Eh? Like that's the whole idea of like the abolition of the police force, this huge, knee-jerk reaction that people are saying. And I mean, in all reality, in some cases, the idea that Camden, New Jersey is it was highlighted in NPR, and they literally did that 7 years ago. They realized there was a major problem. They had 18 times the murder rate in their city than the national average. 18 times, like bad. And they literally. They abolished the entire police force. They put them all through psych evals, physical evals, put a 50-page interview process. I mean, it was a full deal. And when it comes to doing something like that, that is the abolish and rebuild. Like nobody is saying, and I got to do multiple arguments today. Nobody is saying abolish the police and then do nothing. Nobody is saying that. Okay, there might be a couple people, but they're wrong. Anyways, most people are saying if the police force is this bad, if it is cancer is this thoroughly riddled throughout that police force in this particular area, this location, this city, this region, it needs to be abolished and it needs to be rebuilt from the end. Like everyone has to go exactly back through the entire process of getting hired in. And we really need to make sure that none of those people who have all of these Derek Chauvin 17, 20, 85, whatever the number of use of force examples throughout their history, like those guys need to be looked at and they need to be evaluated. And so like that's the whole point of some of this stuff is like there's the defund, like demilitarization and taking some of that money away, but also reevaluate these people whether or not they're actually fit to serve.
Especially if you want to interest them with something as lethal as, a firearm, we need to make sure that the people who we allow to legally carry those or are required to carry those legally should be, people who we know we can trust and we feel safe giving them that power.
The license to kill is, it's if you've been given that power, it's a zero-sum game essentially. If you've been giving that power, there needs to be that much oversight over you. Otherwise, you don't get that power. But I honestly don't think that equation is equal. I think people are given that level of power, and I don't believe the accountability and the monitoring is there, and that's part of the problem.
Yep. And this actually here is a research paper, right? So this talks about police use of force policies for lack of protection, right? They talk about why people fail, why the police officers fail, what they do, fail. But
the theme of the paper, fail.
Yeah, they do. But this actually is very interesting, right? Because they talk, and here you go. You can click on the full study if you would like, or you can download the report and manipulate the data yourself. But here is the things we were just talking about.
That's nice.
There's no paywall. Yep.
Yes.
Here's the things we were talking about where, and you can actually look at it by different city. Where do you live, Hannah? Cleveland.
Cleburg.
Ooh, so I don't like I don't like that it's small, but Cleveland hits everyone but two of them, right? So the only thing that they don't is require exhaust on all other means before shooting, require comprehensive reporting. So they hit every other one of them but those two. And I think
that was one of the things that the NPR article was talking about, is the police chief or people that were in charge of policing in general were saying we are directly connected. And there was something that they had an oversight that they implemented that was like a federal regulatory accountability thing that was on it. It was kind of like how Flint had an emergency manager that came in to work on the city and try to get it to stop sucking dirty mercury water out of the Flint River, and the Legionnaire's disease and all that kind of stuff. Well, I believe that Cleveland in its past had some kind of oversight situation where they were like, y'all got to fix this, and you're going to fix this by increasing accountability or whatever. And they were talking about that while I was driving home, and they were saying we cannot do what some of these other cities have been doing as far as hiding what our police are doing, because we have a law, we have an accountability law that is keeping our hands tied and keeping our transparency high, which is awesome. I wonder what Grand Rapids is on there, because I was trying to explain to some people, but they were like, Grand Rapids, why is it so bad there? And I was trying to explain to them that they have this is a relatively large city as far as Michigan is concerned, but it's not a large city nationally. But they have regularly hit national news lines as far as some of the bad conduct behavior of their police force in the city. And so it's a small city, but there was a pretty hot kettle boiling there. And I think that's part of the reason why the city itself was hit so bad. Cleveland had some issues. They shut down the city, and they really went military. I mean, they locked down all the exits. You couldn't get into the city off the highways. I was actually surprised. My exit to get off and get to where I work is the first exit that you could actually get off at. So I didn't have any difficulty getting into work, but they were like, you can't get in and out of the city at all on any of the major highways and stuff. So I don't know. Cleveland was it was a couple of days, and they burned out a relatively liberal district, which I didn't really understand. But in the end, they, according to this data, they do a decent job. So that's kind of nice to hear. I'm happy about that.
Yep. So if you look, 44 out of 100 of the police departments reviewed require officers to de-escalate situations. That's only 44 out of 100. Pretty low percent.
That's not good enough.
Yeah.
De-escalation should be the number or one of, at least in the top two priorities.
Should be at least top 90%. I mean, that's the first thing you should be doing. Hey, we got a call. There's a woman who needs to go to a rehab center. She's being violent. She doesn't want to go.
That was Canada, man. That wasn't America. Stop confusing the two.
Okay. We got a call. We need to go into this place. Accidentally, we went to the wrong place, and we shot a lady who was sleeping in her bed, and her boyfriend shot at us, and we arrested him. Okay, so America de-escalated by shooting sleeping people. It's just I don't know what planet they're living on, but this type of situation, the no knock raids, ununiformed raids, unmarked car raids, there are those types of things where I've seen images from England of the British cars that have just neon and reflections everywhere. Then you see an American police car Charger that is just completely murdered out. It's black, it's dark, you can't see, nothing reflects. And then this is an example of the American police force is essentially hiding and trying to catch you, while the British police force are there as a support item. They're a thing that is there to help you. And whether or not you agree with that or whatever, but that kind of visibility and transparency, a no knock raid and a non-uniform raid, if you mix those two things together, those are people breaking into your house. Where that's what that is. There's no other way to know, unless you're I'm a criminal and someone's going to kick this door down, and of course I'm going to shoot them Like other than that, like if there's any mistake made anywhere in that situation, those are criminals kicking in your house. I don't have guns readily available that I would ever be able to return fire because I have long rifles for hunting, which is like there's just no, but like knives and things like that. But in the end, if it came down to it, with police kicked in my door, I would, in my family, would be immediately victims. Like there's no accountability, and so like that second hand of things where like people need to protect their houses and have weapons ready at hand. Like the police doing this is an example, in my opinion. The people that are supporting the police kicking in doors and shooting people is an example of why Second Amendment people should be like they're trying to attack and hurt people as opposed to like protecting your homes. Like they should hate this. I don't know. It's where the libertarian Second Amendment community is on this. They're silent. I don't understand what the issue is.
Yeah, and I think there's so much to go through. We could be here, all night.
Yeah.
But this is showing that nothing hits over 50% except for that one. This one thing to require officers to give verbal warning when possible.
Dude, I saw a video. Did you see the LA police chief screaming at like a police conference or whatever? There's like news conference. The LA police chief was like yelling, and someone edited it up. And there was a guy who was like, "Stop resisting, stop resisting!" And there were 5 cops punching this dude in the head all at the same time. And this dude was recording and just yelling, "Stop resisting." So he was in compliance with that one rule, while
everybody beat the shit out of him.
While his coworkers were Rodney Kinging the hell out of someone.
So here's an actual scientific study, right?
Okay.
And I want to precedent this if I didn't earlier. I didn't do all this research. This was from people of color gave these things to me. This was not Chris going, "Oh, I'm going to Google this." So I don't deserve the credit for this in any way, shape, or form.
This is just a thing that exists.
These are things that people were giving to me when I started to ask the questions of, "Hey, I have a podcast. I do these things. I would like actual resource." This, unfortunately, is behind a paywall, so we're not going to go through it. But here's an actual study that looks at different types of data on the criminal and crime decline, where they use urban sociology to consider how violence is regulated through the communities through social force of citizens versus cops. We'll just call it that way, right?
Okay.
So this right here's an actual resource that there's a study, right?
That's cool. So like this is like citizens arrest type thing, like those guys that shot Ahmaud Arbery, like that. You know what I mean? They were like, "We're citizens arrest. We're citizens."
Yes, but it works different. It works different in not all white rich communities. So that's the difference. This article here talks about way to reduce police shootings. Right, federal intervention provides crucial to lowering the police shooting count in Philly and other departments. Here, and this article here is not even recent. Like obviously nobody's
Sessions got the boot a long time ago when Trump loved him, then he hated him. It was kind of like dating in high school.
Yeah. They talk about how the shootings have fallen 20%, right?
Yeah.
When federal intervention provided crucial to lowering the police shooting count, right? So think about it this way. If Trump went sit in his bunker and tweet out, "We're going to send the federal military to stop this," and he said, "We're going to send the federal military and the National Guard to start arresting police officers who are being violent," don't you think that you would de-escalate things pretty quickly? Because who's escalating things? I mean, look, if you come up, you immediately escalate things to me, right? If you walk up in riot gear, you're really escalating things. Like, now I know some shit's going down. I don't know what do you think I got? Like, my house has no guns, FYI. I have no guns in my house. I'm the same way as Hannah. If you walked into my house, we'd probably be a free-for-all. So don't Google where I live, please.
Well, I mean, if you give me 10 minutes, I could create some kind of
Load it.
return. But like
Well,
in
I
the
sleep
end,
with a
like,
baseball bat by my bed, and
well, that's the
something
thing.
else by
Like,
my bed,
I'm not
so-
going to go to a rifle or to a firearm as first defense. It's going to go completely towards a blade. In the end, like that's one of those things. Is like most people that are gonna, that's not going to be something they're going to have bedside ready.
Yeah, but you were missing the point here. The whole point is that instead of the feds coming in, right, and saying, "Hey, we're gonna, enforce the law," them coming in and saying, "Hey, let's stop where the violence is happening. Let's stop this," because it's cutesy to see all these police officers kneeling, right? It's
Mhm.
cutesy to see them out barbecuing with them. Great, good, got it. But you're not changing anything. If every single police department doesn't do that instead, you're not changing anything. In Grand Rapids, they didn't do that. That did not happen in Grand Rapids. They shot tear gas at protesters. I have friends that were down there. They shot tear gas at protesters because they didn't want to deal with them. They wanted to go home. They only like so much hazard pay. I mean, when you make 60 grand a year and you get $20,000 of hazard pay, you only want to work so many hours for it. You sure as hell don't want to work, more than you have to because you're not going to get paid more. So the problem is when we get to that point, if we're not actually looking at track records, if we're not looking at where is the public scrutiny going to come in and what is the federal government going to do, that's when these things take over. And this is where Trump should 100% fail because of this. This article alone right here. You don't want to defund or do any of these things, then where the fuck's the federal government? Tell me where my federal government is that's going to come in and take care of these issues instead of exacerbating them, because that's what he's doing.
Well, my argument is that Trump doesn't think that what the police are doing is wrong. I mean, he wanted to throw the military at the people who were protesting in the White House. Like, he doesn't think these things are wrong. If given the opportunity, an authoritarian will authoritarian.
Well, Trump is the kind of person who,
You know
for
what I
him,
mean?
whatever is right in the moment is right. And
Well,
that's
that
all
too.
that matters.
But might makes right. He is
Well,
very
doesn't
very
require
short
thinking
term.
ahead, though. That's the thing.
Yeah, he's very short term, and he will support those kinds of things. Jeff Sessions himself, that post, that article about everything that Jeff Sessions had said in the past, like those are things that were consistent with what he was when he was a federal judge or denied to be a federal judge when he was a senator. Those are the kind of things that he had always supported. It was not a surprise that he wanted to reduce the federal connectivity to any kind of policing. Like that's the entire idea, that theoretical idea of the Republican Party is like decentralizing the U.S. government. They want to reduce the U.S. government overarching states' rights, right? Cities' rights, unless you want to, make some changes to the EPA or something like that. Then the federal government is going to be, no, you don't have states' rights. You can't make that change. The California CARP, the California basically California's version of the EPA, they want to make some changes and no, we want to fight that or whatever. It's like it's states' rights unless those rights are contrary to our party belief system. And so Jeff Sessions doing what he did, it's not a surprise, and it's definitely one of those things that the Obama administration wanted to increase accountability for the federal government to make police be held accountable after the Ferguson riots, after all of that kind of stuff, when Obama actually went out and marched with some of those people instead of hiding in his bunker. Those things were rescinded. Anything that had Obama's name on it was either obliterated, rescinded, or repealed immediately, not because of policy or for practicality, just because it was a black president who had done it. Like, in all reality, watching it happen over time, I really do think it is that simple and that ridiculous. And so this is an accountability thing that the Obama administration was trying to do, never quite got into effect, and Biden is supposed to carry the torch in some way, and I don't think he will. But they were at least trying. This administration has completely pulled their hands off, and
they don't care.
And I guarantee, but the thing is, I guarantee they support the aggressive, violent response. He wanted to shut down the protesters, violently stop them. They tear gas them so he could stand in front of a church and take a picture. It's a kind of thing that I guarantee he has no trouble with these types of policing actions.
Yeah, so before we get to our quick saves, I have so much. I don't even know, man. Like,
we could reconnect to this, and
I have like articles that talk about what it looks like without the police state.
Let's make it 2.0. Let's make it 2.0.
But I want to highlight this before we do anything else, and I only say this because these are 8 simple things, and we go all the way back to what were we talking about with Campaign 0? Here you go. Ban chokeholds, ban strangleholds, require de-escalation, require warning shots before shooting. There you go. That's logical, right? If you thought I had a gun and you shot in the air, I sure as hell would be on that ground. I'd be like, oh, leave me alone, you know.
Well, warning shot like down away where you'll hit something. So like
you're not at a kneecap.
Well, you don't. Yeah. Well, no. I know. No Biden kneecap leg shots. Anyways, but aim towards something that's like a wall. Or one of the reasons why they don't recommend that is because that bullet itself can move around.
It could.
And but you don't go into the air because someone a couple miles away could get plugged. And so that's like the New Year's shooting into the sky type thing. So that's one of the they have like all kinds of. It's really hard to be able to do the warning shot. I don't know if they have a round or something. Like maybe the first round in your magazine could be a blank.
It's blank. Yeah, there you go.
You know what I mean? Just bang, just to throw that first one out of there. That could just be a regulated thing. The first round in a magazine is blank, and there's going to be people that say like, we have to have the immediate responsibility to be able to fire immediately. Okay, well, it doesn't take that long to pull the trigger 2 times or whatever. I don't know. That's the
they
thing.
do
But
tests
the,
for those
the warning
types of things.
the warning shot makes me a little uneasy. Either way, continue.
Yep. Require exhaust all alternatives before shooting. Duty to intervene, which essentially means every other cop. Like when those rookies saw them kneeling on him, they should have tackled them. 3 people could have taken that cocksucker down. Period.
I know. They should have completely and totally risked their careers to stop a superior from killing someone because he was killing someone.
Yep. Because 2 of them could have knocked him down. The other one could have put his hand on that guy's back and said, "Hey, don't move." Boom. The other 2 knocked that guy down.
Tie him up and just keep him alive. Yeah, I agree.
Yep. Ban shooting at moving vehicles. Require use of force continuum, which we can come back to in a second. Require comprehensive reporting. So force continuum is establish a force continuum that restricts the most severe types of force to the most extreme circumstances and creates clear policy restrictions on the use of each police weapon and tactic.
Yeah, so you don't get to go to your gun first. You got to go to a stun gun first. You got to go to pepper spray first, or whatever.
Or pepper spray, or any you could
there would
pull
be a
your handcuffs
regulation
out and be like, "Hey, look, I got these. You want to go to your jail?" So these are, I don't know. We spent a lot of time tonight.
It's tough to be a cop. It's really, really difficult to be a cop. But you've also been given the power to take a life. It shouldn't be an easy job. It shouldn't be an easily attainable job. And in my opinion, it should be a higher education, without question, Canada-style job. I mean, you should have, you should have a training that is extensive and puts you into a top tier level of society. You really should be overqualified to be carrying a weapon and potentially taking lives.
Fair enough. As we end the show, we always do quick saves. Let's go through our quick saves first. Hannah, you get up first.
So whales, why are they so damn big?
Because why not?
Every once in a while, I see something and I'm like, I don't know the answer to that question. I have a general idea of why I know the answer. I kind of know. And this is just a thing that was on Reddit for Ask Reddit, and it was awesome. It was so much fun. Like, someone asked why whales are so big, and someone came back. It's like, listen, essentially, it's the environment they're in. They're in a huge space. There's a certain amount of body heat and temperature that need to be equalized for where they are because they're mammals. They need to breathe. Like, there's a bunch of scientific explanations as to why whales are so big. And because, like, I've heard people tell me that it's a remnant of the ancient times when oxygen-rich environment allowed land-dwelling creatures like
dinosaurs.
well, the flying ones, the biggest
Megafauna?
ones. Any of those guys that were so big, they were like, why are these things able to fly, and why are these species able to be so large? The megafauna as well, when you come to the redwoods and stuff like that, like that is something that, like all of those kind of prehistoric situations, and whales are just another thing that's really, really big. But like if you throw a goldfish in a really big koi pond, it's gonna be a big goldfish. But if you keep your goldfish in your stupid little aquarium in your house, it's only gonna be a couple inches. Like the adjustment of the body of the creature to the size of the environments and the temperature and all that kind of stuff. It's just a really informative thing that like I didn't expect to learn that much about whales, and it was awesome. So like the link is in that was that a person included, essentially explaining a lot of the reasons why whales and what they are, and so like add it to, whales have hip bones to your argument and explanation as to why things happen in society, because
evolution,
in biology, and all of the other reasons that you are, attacked if someone asked you why whales went back into the sea. And, this is just another thing that can explain why they're so big, why they have hips, all that good stuff. I thought it was just a fun thing, and I enjoyed it.
Fair enough. Keith, you're up next.
So this is one of my go-to subreddits for when I really just want to relax and unwind and feel good about the world, because as you've listened for the last almost 2 hours,
the Prozac subreddit,
borderline actually. This is non-chemical assisted good feelies, and this is r/iBleach, all one word, EYE bleach. And basically all it is just aesthetically pleasing. Most of it's just really cute animals. And as an animal lover, I'm sure anybody watching has noticed my cat's hopped up on my lap a few times tonight. I absolutely adore animals. They're so adorable, and they're amazing. And I think that it's something that, it helps kind of ground me, because we're surrounded with this nonstop 24-hour doom and gloom news cycle, and especially these days with COVID and George Floyd and everything surrounding that, Australia being on fire for a few months. It's just nice to remember that there are good things in life, and there are things that you can look at that will, instead of make you go, they'll make you go, oh. And not all of us have our own little kids, our own little animals to do that. So this is just something that I'll go through if I've had a really bad day, and I'm just like, I just want to be happy for a few minutes. So it's just nice to find some social media that's not all bad, but is specifically catered to be all good.
iBleach used to be recommended after visiting Watch People Die, but now Watch People Die's Reddit is gone because like the CCTV stuff. But some people used to check that stuff out, and they were like,
"Not me.
Must go to iBleach." And so iBleach is a great place. Yeah, it's like r/awe and on any of those other subreddits where it's just a happy place. Crying Dads that I mentioned a few weeks ago, that's a good place too. It's the same thing.
Well, my quick save for the week is a little different. Obviously, it's somewhat Star Wars related, so had to do that, right? But essentially, I had posted something about people not understanding the rebellion, right? People didn't understand the rebellion, how many times they did it in Star Wars. And somebody posted on my timeline an article about how George Lucas originally meant for the Empire to be the I don't know what do you want to call it, the good guys, and I don't know how that works, but that's what they claim. They claim the case for the Empire,
wow.
And essentially Star Wars
revisionist Empire.
Yeah, and this isn't an old article from 2002, and I'll be honest, it's from the Washington Examiner, so there's no seriousness to this. But they talk about the problem of the Galactic Republic, why people were rebelling because nothing was happening. The difference is what the Empire did. But if you only take the movies and just look at those little movies and don't take anything else, you can kind of understand it. But if you actually read anything in canon and anything in the extended universe, then at that point you understand that Palpatine is a completely evil Trump that somehow lived forever and ever and ever, who was smarter than what he originally was, and all these other things. And so,
Good.
yeah, exactly.
Use your aggressive nature. Your transformation to the dark side will be complete.
Exactly. So, anyway, that's kind of the discussion to that point, and I just thought it was kind of fun I thought it'd be fun to bring it up because I had a good spirited debate with a buddy of mine, and then he's like, I don't believe this, right? Like, I'm just giving you shit. And I was like, oh, all right, good for you, thanks. All right, I don't know what you're doing, but
I'm crushing his head.
yeah, I know, that's Canadian. That's not Palpatine. But
Kids in the hall.
I know.
There's nobody home.
We could do a whole Kids in the a whole episode, and I can explain to you the background on why I hated them for so many years.
If we do this for a month, we live here rent free.
Anyway, thank you all so much for joining us in our degrading podcast of Kids in the Hall and Canadian culture. We'll be back next week with another amazing episode and hopefully a little bit more education to help everybody out in these times of crisis. Thank you all again so much, and we'll be back next week with more Cellar Door Skeptics.